Welcome to DT Madness, Chronicles from the Third Life, episode 57, April 29th, 2023. I'm so glad you could make it. If you are from my era and you ever listen to Sublime or know things about history, then anytime you hear April 29th, you might bust into 1992. There was a riot on the streets. Tell me, where were you? This past week has been crazy. It's been super busy. The lead up to AP exams, construction continuing in the school, baseball games and council meetings and all kinds of things. Last weekend, right before or right after the podcast was recorded, I went to Webstock. It is a street festival. This was our second year doing it. We had to push it back to 3 o'clock. It was supposed to start just around noon or a little before, but with the forecast of storms, and there was a storm that came through it right at 2:30, so it was a good decision. But everybody was out at 3, and the first bands kicked off right around then. My good friend Omar Porter was the MC, and I mean vendors, different kinds of food trucks, and people selling like cool hippie scented candles, and the Republican tent was out there, and like different woodworking stuff and beads and face painting. And I mean, what I mean to say is all around like something for everybody. Um, the beer garden was out, and the Greenway was running that, and we expanded the area for people where they could go this time, so you didn't have to stay quite as isolated. And we only had a few people that would wander out of the barriers, as you will. But overall, it was just a really good setup, a really good event. And the first band was, I don't remember, 96-ish, but they had a bunch of different ways to spell it. I think they were a local college band. I mean, it seemed like a lot of the Garden Web kids knew who these people were, and I didn't know like many of the songs that they were playing. Wasn't really my music, and it took them a bit to get warmed up, but once they did sound pretty good. And they did sing one song. I looked up who it was, but I can't remember. Maybe it was like Kings of Leon or something like that. Is that a thing? Um, but the lyrics were something about Stacy's mom has got it going on, and I don't know. That was funny and fun. It was a good time. The who else played? There was a band called Rutherford County Line, and they played some classic Allman Brothers type, Marshall Tucker band type stuff, and sang some Chris Stapleton, I think, maybe, in an Isbell song. Just gritty, really good. And then the Phoebe's band, which is like a throwback. They all dress up like Jimi Hendrix from the 70s, kind of, and then play a bunch of cool soul music. And then, like, there was this band called Cassette Rewind, and they all dressed up like 80s with bright blue blazers and like silky looking, like Don Johnson type stuff, I guess. I don't know, Revenge of the Nerds kind of feel. And I mean, they were great. I mean, they had their synthesizers, and they had it going on. Man, I actually left before Chatham County Line, which is crazy because that was the main draw. But it was just such a long day. I honestly had woken up with a pretty nasty headache, and had to just kind of gut it through. Um, but it was really good, and we're looking forward to next year's Webstock, I think, already. The next day, I guess one of the reasons why I left early is because I knew the next day I was headed up to Boone. I left early and drove up to the Parkway. I had intended to do my meditation practice up on the Parkway. I took my big towel, and I was gonna sit out on a patch of grass, on an overlook somewhere. Um, but man, it was cold. It was windy. And so, yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I sat out there a pretty good while. Um, and took in the views. And then I just went to McAdoo's and had some lunch, and then met up with Sam a little bit to get him some green tea before he sang it up. And but that was really cool. I will say, man, that I was walking along. I thought about maybe I should save this for halftime, but I guess I'll make halftime short and just go ahead with this. But I was walking across the crosswalk, and you know the little walking man, like the white light that says it's time to go on those crosswalk signs. And as soon as it clicked over from the red hand to the white walking man, it there was a car that had just passed by that was stopped, and they were blasting Billie Jean, and it had just come on. You know what I'm like? Do 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 do. Ooh, oh, ooh, ooh. Oh man, and wow, it really just hit. And I've never walked across a crosswalk like that with that much swagger. You know, like I was strolling across that crosswalk, and that was pretty good. And then we went and we saw Sam and his group sing a bunch of different songs from their whole year, and I mean, they just killed it. It was awesome. That's what you say in acapella land. You when they sing good, you say they killed it. And so, but they did, man. It was just really good, and they did these skits in between. They sent their seniors off, and one of the things that their president Adam, um, he Sam actually just was elected vice president for next year, but the president Adam gave every one of them before one of their competitions. He gave them a plastic fork, and he told them to leave no crumb. And for a while, I didn't understand what that meant. I try to stay up on the lingo, of course, because I'm bet. But what he was saying is, eat it up, you know, eat this thing up, give it all you got. Um, do what we came here to do. And that was pretty cool. They all gave him a golden fork at the end of the thing. I took off right after to get back home, and I mean, I stopped at Killen's for some. Oh man, I got tres leche. No, what was it? I can't remember. Man, it was good though. I think that's what it was. There's a. I don't know if you're familiar with Hamilton, the Broadway show, Lin Manuel Miranda, but there's a lot of it is politics and revolution and stuff like that, and then there's this chunk of time where Hamilton goes through a whole bunch of different junk, and his wife is going through the trauma of it all, of the decisions. I don't want to ruin it for you, but it just gets really heavy. It gets really personal. um, and after they deal with all of it, there's kind of a joke line where they say, "Can we get back to politics, please?" And they just kind of want to climb out of that dark hole. But so yeah, of course now it's tea time with Mara, and it's gonna be tea time with Mara here, perhaps for the remainder of the episode. And so I don't know. Maybe some of you out there are just wishing I would get back to ranking um, breakfast cereals, or talking about my favorite smells, or something like that, and getting more onto the lighter side. But yeah, that's not where we are going to be today. So um, I saw an Instagram thing, one of those things that says trauma or major false beliefs, I guess, of people who have experienced trauma. And there's a bunch of stuff like that out there. Again, I'm not like a person that subscribes to Instagram therapy. I think that whatever. I'm not trying to go down that rabbit hole, but I clicked on this one just because I wanted to see what it had to say, and it had six different things, and one of it was like, I am unlovable, insignificant, and unimportant. There's something wrong with me, and if I let people in, if I let people know who I am, yeah, then they're gonna know that. They're gonna run away. I'm powerless over how I feel outside events, outside people, like an external locus of control. Um, I'm responsible for others people's feelings. Like I need to make sure that they are feeling good and that they're the ones that are feeling okay, and that I take that burden onto myself. I can control what others think of me. I can do things that will make them like me. Resisting others' control over me is essential to my integrity. I do the opposite often, even if I want to not to. Um, I can't handle pain, fear, or disconnection from others, and I try to control those via withdrawal or other activities or even addiction. And wow, like, huh, 6 for 6, like, yeah. Back to Woodstock, not Woodstock, Webstock. I wish I was at Woodstock. Um, all these people, I mean, I'm the mayor, and so I'm out there and I'm just walking around, making laps, wanting to be visible. That's part of it. Probably a lot for my ego. I don't doubt that. But also because I'm the mayor, I'm the representative of the town, and so I want to make sure the vendors see me. I want to make sure everybody gets, I want to make sure if anybody has something to say that they know that I'm around. I walked definitely over 10,000 steps that day just doing that. And all these people would come up to me. I mean, people that I've known a long time, people that have known me my whole life, people that I just met, people that know who I am and know who my family is, and they would come up to me and they would ask me, how's your dad doing? And they would whisper to me things, that they didn't want someone else to hear about what they thought about the situation with my dad, and then they would talk about how great Webstock is and how awesome this is and how I've done a great job, and I told my manager and all this kind of stuff. Like I don't want to take all that credit on myself because I do very little in terms of that other than kind of help set like a direction. But again, that's part of being it. And so all these just different random people would come up, one at a time, and I can do that kind of thing. It's draining for me to engage in that type of talk, but I can do it. I'm pretty good at it. But I recognize, like, I don't know, I was standing there, kind of in my spot, right in the middle, in front of the Broad River Greenway office, like where I would just stand. Once I was stationary, I could hear the music, and all this kind of stuff. And I realized that I was just completely alone in this sea of people. More people than we've had gather in downtown Boiling Springs in over 20 years. It was said to me that maybe since we had the Olympic trials for bicycles, for bicycle racers in '96, has that many people gathered. So it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and yet, man, I just had this I mean, not like overwhelming, but this sense that just washed over me, that I'm completely alone. And so I went to my counseling session at Living Lotus, and I wanted to talk about that. Like I wanted to talk about this aloofness, this what does Neil Young sing in Unknown Legend? This faraway look, that I get. And where does that come from? And is that something that I put up before I go out there? Does it happen once people begin to approach and these types of things? But the question that my person asked was, how old do I feel when I get into that defensive posture? And that really, it really struck me. Um, Somebody asked me this week, if I felt like counseling was just kind of telling me what I already knew about myself, or if it was really something new. And I guess in my experience, I think the answer to that is yes. I think that the purpose, at least for my counselor, is knowing that this stuff is all in me, that I do know it. Like in my experience, it's that my body knows it, because where we start is with sensory motor. So I feel, I remember in my body what that feels like, that defensiveness, that aloofness, where those layers are from. And so when she asked me how old I felt, like it's just one of those striking questions, like, oh man, I didn't know that was where we were going to go with this. I honestly went into this session thinking, hey, we could do 20 minutes of this session for me to practice these meditation skills that I'm working on. But yeah, that didn't happen. And at first I thought, you know what, maybe this goes back to the the sense of divorce, that I felt after this church group that I was a part of. We called ourselves BRCC. And I thought maybe that was part of where it came from. And I didn't even consider the idea that I was walking, and I didn't even consider it even during the session that maybe part of it was this tightrope that I'm walking as mayor of Boiling Springs at Webstock, and this separation that I have from Gardner Webb, which will be what we talk about in the second half today. Today's going to be a long one. But I realize that the age that I feel when I feel that defensive aloofness is young, like little kid young. And the question is, what is that? What is that kid? What does he want you to know? And I don't know, man. Like I don't know if this is too much. Let me go back to this sixth thing. Maybe I worry too much about what you're going to think. But I suspect that there are at least one of you out there that deals with stuff too. And anyway, what does this kid want you to know, and what he wants people to know, what he wants to be understood is that he's always had to be shiny. He's always had to put up this shiny exterior. And that shine has been enough. Like that shine has been enough. That charm has been enough to win you over. I can win you over with it. I can. I'm good at it. But you don't know him. You don't know him, me. I'm the only one that can know that young kid. I'm the only one who can understand because there's this door, that was opened, and this darkness put inside, and then it was locked away in the way that it came in a visualization was that door was just kind of on his gut, on his stomach, and that it was locked away, and that there was this sense of fracture, like this fractured sense of being, this fractured sense of self. And so there's this shiny, let me show you who I am, let me try to make you like me, let me try to make you think that I'm good. He's a good kid. And then that kind of translates into to anger. I was in there sitting on that couch, punching my palms, like just, which is what my therapist looks for. She looks for those types of sensory motor activities. And then, what's he angry about? He's angry at having to live these splintered lives. He's angry at having to put up this front of having to have that junk locked away for 40 years. I'm getting angry now. And then it's like, what does it mean for me now? Because when I read these six things on Instagram and I go through these sessions, um, at Living Lotus, and I think like trauma, this type of trauma that happened to me when I was a kid has defined me for my life. It has been a huge reason why I act, why I believe, why I think, why I respond the way that I do. And so, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me now? Are those chains my chains? What does it mean for me to nod in acceptance of being loved, of playing at the creek? Because that was that was kind of the visual that I got when I think about this little kid. Like, who am I? If I'm healed, so quote unquote, if I'm more fully me, if I'm whole, then what does that mean for me? How does that I trust that. I trust that process. I just don't know right now. Like that's part of this journey. Because when I did recognize the little kid, like I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying here, but um, when I think about that little kid, when I recognize him, when he sees that I recognize, when he understands that someone understands, even though it's just me, it's wild. It was a wild therapy session. It was gut wrenching. Something that I think I'm still processing it, which is maybe why I'm just going to ramble on for a while today. But when I recognize him down there, what all he can do is nod. But that just little snaggletooth nod, smiling, like, yeah, okay, let's go play at the creek, because that's it. It's too much for him to try to cognitively process that. He wasn't old enough. He just nods, with that cotton head and that snaggletooth smirk. He just nods, and then he goes down to the creek, wanting, longing, yearning to be free. Well, that's kind of an abrupt halftime, I know, and I didn't play the tea time with Mara music because we'll jump back in here in just a second. But just for a quick halftime, to get your wheels turning, I will say that this past week, April 24th, 1999, was my panic versary. Um, I talk a lot about fish here on the Chronicles of the Third Life because since 2020 and since Fish Radio started, you guys know this. Like that's pretty much all I listen to, and in just a few months, I'll be off on the road. I hope hitting up a bunch of shows, but my whole second life, like for 20 plus years, starting in April of '99, I was a Widespread Panic guy, and I saw them the first time at Charlotte's Inner City Fest, and so yeah, I always celebrate that. My friend Nora was there, like as a 15-year-old. I didn't know her at the time, but it was her first show as well. So we always cheers to our Panic Versary. But the real thing about halftime this time is as a question that's just been it's one that we've been debating all week, and I've been debating with some of you on Instagram. But the question is, how many chuggas before choo choo? And there are some of you who would say two, you know, chugga chugga choo choo. And okay, but I don't feel like you're really feeling it. Because for me, it's definitely six. You know, some people say four, and that just doesn't feel balanced to me. Chugga, 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 choo choo. I don't know. If you're really going to feel it, if you're really going to get that, chugga, 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 choo choo. Did I do six there? I think I did because it felt just right. So how many? How many you got? Is it more than six? I don't think so. Unless your train is really starting off slow and then picking up steam. The second half, I'm gonna read a thing that I wrote, and it's something I may post on Facebook. Although I may video post it, like I might record myself reading it so that people can get the tone. But we'll see. I'm just gonna read it to you here. Eat 'em up, go dogs go. That's the way I remember it, sitting on what is now the visitor side, watching the Running Bulldogs play against Sac 8 opponents in the NAIA at Spangler Stadium. I remember names like Eddie Wilkins and Stan Easterling and Brad. What was his last name? He was number 14. And Angie Black, and getting to be the kid that got to wipe up the sweat at the brand new Paul Porter Arena in the LYCC. I remember the Special Olympics at the stadium when my mom was helping Lonnie Proctor with that amazing event, and maybe a class field trip to watch the Blue Angels fly. I remember how I learned how to swim in the Gardner Webb pool. I can still imagine the smell of those locker rooms and the jolt of the cold showers before hopping in the warm pool. At least one of my birthdays was a pool party there, and it's memorable because me and the boys had to march from campus house to the pool in about, I don't know, 8 inches of snow. I want to say that was in '88. Somebody can check and see if we had a big snow in January of 1988. I had the fastest bike in the neighborhood for sure, and I'd ride down the hill toward the spring, stopping to catch crawdads under the white lattice gazebo, and then race along the track of sidewalks around campus. We'd park the bikes and visit mom in the business office or financial aid and get candy from those wonderful folks in those buildings. We'd stop off at campus police to see my dad on the rare occasions he was working in the daytime. My parents were fixtures on campus for decades and decades. After my seventh grade year, we moved out of the apartment at Campus House and into a house on Memorial Drive, but it was still campus housing. When I tell people I grew up on campus, some may not know how literal that is. After graduating from Crest in 1996, I enrolled at Davidson College. After a difficult year, though, I returned home to what would become my alma mater, Gardner-Webb University. Of course, we went sledding on cafeteria trays, and well, I guess I better not tell that whole story. I served in student government and made pleas for increased community among all groups on campus. I developed relationships with professors such as the brilliant Dr. Henderson, the cerebral Dr. Hembright, and the inimitable Dr. Eastman. And after too long of a delay, I gleaned from the intellect of Dr. Yelton. I was a history and political science guy, so that's where I spent my time. But Tracy Jessup and Dr. Theodo, and oh man, how much did Dr. Partain change my perspective with his grace and knowledge? And then I took a philosophy class with Dr. Carskadden. What a human being. I'm still driven by some of the questions from that course and am influenced and enlightened by his existence. And what's even better, the study group that formed from that class happened to have a girl named Sarah Donaldson. After a few months of studying, sitting on the swing outside strapped together, playing spades, taking road trips, and having exquisite dates at the Waffle House or the campus caf, I asked her to marry me. And lucky for me, she said yes. We got married on June 9th, 2001, and we got married, you guessed it, on campus. My long-haired, barefooted self walked into Willie Nelson singing Blue Skies as my bride came around in a horse-drawn carriage around Lake Hollifield as the bell tower chimed. It was at sunset, and the whole scene was magical. Since then, I've gotten my master's at Gardner-Webb. I've served as an adjunct professor for a year, teaching education classes, and Sarah and I, along with our three kids, served as college pastors for dozens and dozens of Gardner-Webb students over the years. Wednesday nights, you could find us all gathered at our house talking about campus and life and scarfing down lasagna. And then the great divorce. You may know, you may not, but after 43 years of service to Gardner-Webb, my dad was let go, unceremoniously let go. Walked in on a Monday morning to find out he needed to pack up his office. I'm honestly not here to bring all that back around again, but it's a real thing. Because of other struggles that I'm working through, I went over to campus a few days ago. I parked at the clubhouse in the parking lot in front of the apartment I stayed in as a student and the clubhouse that held the rehearsal dinner for my wedding. I peeked in the clubhouse to remember that stormy, rainbow-laced afternoon that marked the last day before marriage. I walked around the lake, the same way that my bride rode along in a horse-drawn carriage. I stopped by Tucker to remember the few classes I held in that building as an adjunct. I walked down to the creek, which looks a lot different than it did in the 1980s, but it's still the same spring source that I sauntered around as a kid. I stood. I took in the view and all that it represents. I pondered. And I realized that the divorce isn't just about my dad. I realized that as a result of that, there was a tear in my own fabric. I was born into Gardner-Webb. My dad was working a running Bulldog basketball game the night my mom went into labor. My entire life, over 4 decades, had been intricately woven into the red and black, into Prodeo et Humanitate. And then all of a sudden, it just wasn't. Part of what makes that strange and difficult is that I'm the guy. What I mean to say is that I was elected to town council in 2015, and after several months of listening and learning from some phenomenal leaders, I began to help steer the path of the town. I was an effective council member. I long for consensus. I'm a good listener, and I strive to synthesize differing viewpoints to help make the best decisions for all involved. I really do. And as best I can tell, I think I'm doing a pretty good job as mayor. I was elected to this position in 2021 and have done the best I can to keep folks informed and to create unity and forward movement. I've said it before, I'm about as Gardner-Webb and Boiling Springs as one can be. I'm in a position to be able to help tie these institutions that have defined me together. I've been around to support the theater program and the arts and attended book discussions on campus with students, and have done my best to be forgiving and to signal my willingness as mayor to serve the town and the university. There are obstacles for sure, and there are personality differences, but as best as I can tell, that just seems to be how life is. I can't deny my history, the terrific and the terrible. I'm a product of the wonderful people of Boiling Springs and at the same time of the fine folks of Gardner Webb. And I am resolved to move forward. I am resolved to seek ways that I can create relationships with the students, faculty, and staff on the campus that has served as my home. I am resolved, with what little power and influence I possess, to engage in the enhancement of my home as a way to pay it forward, because so many people along the way have helped me find and enjoy my path. I want to do what I can to smooth out the ground for those that follow. Pro Deo et Humanitate, for God and humanity. One town, one university, one community. So we'll see. Maybe I'll post that, or maybe I'll go down and record it sitting by the spring so people can hear the tone. I wear a shirt that has the word YAWP on it, YAWP. If you haven't seen Dead Poet Society, you should watch it. And even if you don't, you should read Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. I believe this one's in number 52. It's 51 or 52 or 53, somewhere around in there. But he says, I too am untamable. I too am untranslatable, like a hawk. I sound my barbaric yawp over the rooftops of the world. And I think about life, and I think about all that it gives, and I think about all that it is for me, for you, for all of us. And I just want to scream this from the rooftops. I just want to yawp, not even in anger, but just in existence, like Bobby Weir sings. Listen to the thunder shout. I am here, and I yawp. Monday is the AP government exam, and so I gave the kids a speech, um, a little bit, kind of briefed them up a little bit on the the practice of the exam. And then I told them to embrace the challenge. I'm not giving them this speech such as to say, it's just a test, don't worry about it, it's okay. They've done the work. Embrace the challenge. They'll feel the things, they'll feel the things, no doubt. Some of them will feel like they want to throw up, and some of them will want to cry, and they might want to run around. That's what I would want to do. I'd want to move and fidget, but everybody's feeling that, and that's okay. Feel that. That's good because you've put yourself out there. You have sought out this challenge. Now embrace it. I put up a picture of my oldest boy, Sam, who's just exhausted sitting on a tennis court. And I gave him this speech a little bit that was, a lot of times Sam, he was just elected vice president of voicemail. And sometimes people will make comments and I make the comments like, man, this kid has been on quite a winning streak. He's succeeded in tennis, valedictorian. He got the Dover scholarship, whatever. Like he gets the solos and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? When he was in ninth grade playing tennis, his appendix almost ruptured, and he had to have it removed. At the same time, he had the flu, and at the same time, he experienced his first heartbreak. 10th grade, he played one match of tennis, and then COVID shut our world down. 11th grade, back into it, and we're playing tennis, and he's having a successful year. And they lost to their friends. Like, what an agonizing defeat in the conference championship. And then that happened again his senior year. The same kind of thing. Other heartbreak that he has experienced along the way. I just wanted to be fair to my son and recognize that it isn't always, whatever, like, and always a smooth sea. Sometimes things are choppy, but we do our best to overcome. We do our best to embrace the challenge. We do our best to make our ripples. And then I told him, I told him what I stole Adam, his thing about leave no crumb, leave no crumb, eat this junk up. Go after it with what you got. You are prepared. You are already outstanding. There is no way that I can be more proud of you, because the thing I realize about all of this kind of stuff, the thing maybe part of the things I'm punching my palms about is that for all of my life that I can remember, my value and my worth I have placed in your hands. I want you to think that I am good. I want you to think that I am successful. I want you to think that, I'm valuable and worthy. And I'm good at that. That shiny part of me makes that happen. But that's bogus, because my value and my worth doesn't come from what you think. I don't have to tell you that, but that's what I do. And I want these kids to understand it isn't about a test that defines them. It isn't about what somebody else thinks. Comparison is a thing. It just is a thing. And that's okay as far as it goes. But you are already outstanding. So leave no dadgum crumb, and don't take yourself so seriously. I got an email from my town manager about Webstock as he was going fast, and he left off the R in mayor. And so it says Mr. Mayo. I told him if it was Dukes, that was fine with me. I'd be Mr. Mayo. But these are great kids. I know many of you that listen to this podcast, and I know you're great people, because you are. Just because you are, you exist, you're here. Let that yawp roar. To those of you who see me for all of me, even when I can't, and yet you still want to be around, I'm saying you see me for more than just the shiny. You know my flaws. You know how much of a jack leg I can be. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Yeah. Because I'm coming to realize, and I'm trying to realize, I guess. I don't know that I'm there yet. But what I'm trying to realize is that we don't have to know each other fully to be present, to be authentic. Thankfully, because we couldn't. That's why, the Thoreau quote of seeing someone, being able to see through another's eyes, if only for an instant, would be quite a miracle. Because we can't. There's only so far we can go in terms of our knowledge of each other, but we do have a shared experience. This thing, humanity, this thing called life. So we don't have to know each other fully to be authentic, to eat this thing called life, to eat it up. And I'm working on believing and beliving that. Well, this has been a Church of Six production, for sure. Man, I don't know what are we brought to by the Bucket of Life. Got to be the lead sponsor this week with the Ripples. By the Foundation Tower of Stone, for all of those of you who have been with me, who have raised me up. By the Token of Hope, by the Magic Rock, ×2. And by the Wall of Belief, which I think might get a new quote or two. But definitely leave no crumb. Eat them up. Because nothing divine is desperate. Don't forget to believe, y'all. And be live. Peace, my friends.